Hey everybody, Joseph Baba Ifa here once again, live broadcasting from Botanica Candles and More Facebook. First and foremost, before we get into today's video, the first thing we want to go ahead and do is wish everybody well and hoping that everybody is doing well and is finding themselves healthy amongst this coronavirus pandemic. Due to the fact that we're going to be home for about the next 2 weeks here in Orange County, we're going to be coming out with quite a bit of material, being that we have the time to be able to come out with a bunch of new Orisha videos and a bunch of new things. So, but first and foremost, we want to go ahead and start by saying and hoping that everybody is doing well, and our prayers are with you and your families as we go through this trying time, right? But here we're trying to stay productive. We're studying a lot of Ifa. We're going to be coming out with a bunch of material, and what better time? Sometimes Olodumare or the Orishas do things in a way that we might not understand at the moment, but there's always a reason for the amount of time that they want us to be able to take to ourselves, reboot, protect ourselves, our families, reorganize our lives. Everything happens for a reason, right? So what we're going to go ahead and do today is we're going to come out with a new video on Shango, right? So we've been able to come out with a bunch of Orisha videos, and we just want to continue by coming out with one for each of them. And, it was time to really come out with an Orisha that, is venerated by a lot of people. Shango is one of those things, or one of those Orishas that everybody knows who he is, right? He's known as the king of our religion. And he's actually much more diverse than most people would imagine. So we're going to get into the different themes that is Shango, and kind of delve into maybe some things we didn't know about Shango previous to this video, right? So let's go ahead and get started, right? So if we look at the term Shango, right, and what it actually means when we break it down, it can be translated almost as a compound word. When we look at the word Shango, the first word is going to be Shang, right? When we talk about Shang, we're actually talking about somebody hitting something, right? It's actually an aggressive action to hit, right? It's like when we look at the word Opa Shang. Sorry about that. Unfortunately, I have an Amber Alert. Hopefully everything turns out well there. When we look at the term Opa Shang, Opa means staff and Shang means hit. So the Opa Shang, or the pachanes, as they're known, are actually the sticks used to hit the Egungun masquerade or to guide them through the town. So when we look at the word Shango, Shang means to hit, and Go means with permission or to have permission, like Ago. So when we look at Shang Ago or Shango, it means he who has permission to hit or to strike or to punish or, any of these things. And this really falls in line with a couple different things when we're talking about Shango. First off, Shango is known as the prosecutor of Olodumare, right? He is somebody that basically metes out Olodumare's punishments, right? He's the one who kind of puts Olodumare's words into action, right? Whenever he basically tries to justify somebody. From another aspect, it also talks about Shango's nature, right? We're talking about an Orisha that is characterized by certain elements within nature that are, aggressive, right? Whether it be fire, whether it be thunder. There's also a manifestation of Shango that's associated with stone throwing. And just there are various Odu that speak of Shango as actually a very physical Orisha, right? He knew how to work very well with his hands. So that's the first thing we're going to touch, what the name actually means. When we look at the name Shango, it means he who hits with permission, or he who is allowed to hit, right? Being that Shango was also a deity that really never came under any discipline, right? He basically is the one who disciplines, right? So he was always kind of alleviated of having to deal with maybe the repercussions of his own actions. So that's the first thing. And so one of my biggest goals with these videos is to really try to make the connection between our customs in, the Lukumi, Afro-Cuban, New World Ifa, and then the traditional, Nigerian Ifa, right? So when we're talking about the different cities within Nigeria, and we're talking about how each of them is, in antiquity, and maybe even till now, each city-state is kind of associated with a different deity. So when we look at kind of like the city-state of Ife, and I've talked about this in the Obatala video, is Obatala is seen as the epitome of Orisha, right? He is the epitome of what everyone should try to emulate as far as like following an Orisha, how an Orisha is, how you should, basically mold yourself afterwards. And, Obatala is the epitome of that in the city of Ife, right? He's peaceful, he's calm, he's intelligent, he was able to progress through life, change, purify himself, all of these positive things. Now, when we go to a city like Oyo, it's a little bit different. Being that Oyo is much more Shango-centric. Shango is kind of seen like the epitome of Orisha in Oyo. Being that Shango, in one of his previous incarnations of Oramiyan, who was the son of Odudua, was the one who actually founded Oyo, right? And if you even look at the Alafing and the way he dresses and the mannerisms, it's very Shango-esque. He dresses in a beautiful asho-oke, or the material, and he's usually in red. You could see kind of the difference between kind of like the characteristics or the way even the Oni, who is the king of Ife, is kind of, seen as being, or has how he should carry himself. And then we look at kind of the difference with the Alafing, who kind of carries his position a little bit differently. So you're going to see that difference. And being that Oyo is very Shango-centric, you're going to see that Cuba and the New World is very Shango-centric, right? Because when we look at the majority of the practitioners and unfortunately the slaves who arrived in Cuba through the diaspora, a large part of them were from Oyo, or the Oyo Empire, right? So that's why in Cuba, you can even see, Shango is everything. Shango is the epitome. Shango is the king of our religion, as he's known, right? Alafing. So that's why even in Cuba, there was this old saying where, which man doesn't want to be a son of Shango? And, it's because at least within where our roots come from, Shango is the epitome of that. So that's why you even see in Cuba and the New World, Shango is held in such a high regard, and it kind of reflects within our culture, right? So that's why Shango is what he is within the Oyo Empire. So he's seen as the epitome of Orisha there, and as such in Cuba as well, right? When you hear about Shango, you're going to hear that he was one of the Alafings, right? The word Alafing means owner of the palace, right? As opposed to Orofing, which means kind of owner of the law, which is more like governor. Kind of interchangeable there, but, he was seen as one of the Alafings of Oyo, right? Or the kings of Oyo, being that Oyo is characterized by the palace. Each city-state has a different name for its ruler. As far as in Oyo, being that the palace was the central representation of Shango and is a central monument, they said we need to associate our ruler with the owner of this basically edifice or building, right? So that's why the king in Oyo is known as Alafing, and Shango, within historical record, is actually seen as one of the Alafings. This is actually written, this is actually recognized, right? So he is actually seen as that. Now, some people would say he was the fourth Alafing of Oyo, or in such, the fourth in line after Oramiyan, or the fourth reincarnation of Oramiyan, depending on how you want to look at it. Sometimes that's debatable, because I've seen various things or various lists where Ajaka, where, within the Lukume faith is also known as Jakuta, came before, and unfortunately when Shango passed away, whether it would be through the historical account of his passing or through the mystical account of his suicide, unfortunately, and then rebirth, Ajaka also reinstated himself afterwards. But then, even after that, it says that another king or another Alafing came, and his name was Agayu. And ironically, Agayu is actually one of the Orishas within our faith, but it's seen that he was actually a human being as well. That's why also Agayu is a very perfect example of Orisha, because he is another deified ancestry, somebody that was recognized as living, having extraordinary capabilities and characteristics, and then ultimately became deified. But there's actually a pataki that talks about the various versions of this historical account as to, did Shango actually pass away? Did he resurrect? Who came afterwards, and even his the account of Agayu replacing him as an Alafing afterwards, where even within our tradition and within our mythology, Agayu and Shango play different roles for each other. You're going to see father, son, brother, successor, predecessor, and we're going to get into all of those things in our video today, right? We touched on how our Afro-Cuban practice is very Oyo-centric. And another thing within the Afro-Cuban practice is you're going to see a lot of influences from Benin or Dahomey, right? If we kind of look at the life story of Odudua, and we'll get into this in later videos, and possibly Odudua's birth story and all these things. Some people even debate that, the spiritual ancestors of the Yoruba people are the people from Benin, or Dahomey, or the Arara, as they're known in Cuba, specifically and very heavily in Matanzas, and now in Havana it's seen quite a bit. And the practitioners of voodoo, right? And all the different deities that are, associated with that, whether it be Azohano or Bawaluaye, and all the other different, I guess you could say, Loa. We're looking at the spiritual ancestors of a bunch of different faiths that are seen within the diaspora, as well as, even Africa itself. So that's always interesting, but you're going to see a lot of those influences in our practice as well. When we look at Shango, I guess the best place to start would be kind of his birth story, right? Shango was an interesting story because there's one pataki that speaks of where, Obatala, probably in his manifestation of Osagrinyang, him being the original Orisha, and his wife, some versions say, known as Obatala Yemu, who was a feminine path, were married, right? And, one day Yemu was walking through the forest and had to cross the river, and then she actually came in contact with a gentleman known as Agayu, right? And Agayu was the guy who would take people from one side of the river to the next. So, he would charge tribute for this, right? So what ended up happening was Yemu that day actually didn't have the funds to be able to pay Agayu to go across the river. So what ended up happening is Agayu offered another form of payment. So, they ended up eloping, right? They ended up having relations, and because of this, Yemu was able to cross the river, but she ended up crossing the river with a child, right? So, obviously, this was done out of wedlock. So, Obadala, or Sagrinyang, ended up believing that, Shango was his legitimate son, right? And he raised him as such, and when Shango was born, he was the prince, all of these beautiful things. But, there was, for some reason or another, Shango could not relate with Obadala the way he felt. There was something spiritually missing there. Obadala was unable to fulfill certain aspects of that, paternal filial relationship. And there's some versions where, Yemu confessed to Obadala what had happened, and Obadala knew the whole time. And there's other versions where, it was this one big revelation, and, Shango found out that Obadala or Sagrinyang was not his biological father, right? Regardless of which, there's also another version, believe it or not, where Shango's siblings and even other children in the community told him, you're not Obadala's son. You're technically like an orphan type thing. And Shango was greatly hurt. And there was a conversation that was had with Yemu, where Obadala, where they explained that who his real father was. And whichever version you want to go by, ultimately Shango found out that his biological father was a gentleman named Agayu, who was the deity of the volcano, right? So what ended up happening was that Shango went in search of his father under Yemu's instruction, because the boy wanted to know who his father was. So what ended up happening is he came to the volcano, and he actually entered the volcano, where he encountered Agayu. And Agayu saw him and said, who are you? And he said, my name's Shango, and I'm your son. And Agayu couldn't believe it, because Agayu had forgotten about this dalliance he had with Yemu, so many years beforehand, And so what ended up happening is Agayu told him to leave. Shango said, I'm not leaving until you recognize me as your son. And Agayu actually attacked him. And there's various versions of what he attacked him with. One was magma, fire, all of these things. But he was able to see that this young boy had, this impervience to the methods he was using to attack him. He wouldn't get burned, he wouldn't get hot, he wouldn't get hurt, any of these things. And Agayu kind of came to the conclusion that, this might actually be my son, because of his resilience to, these extreme conditions, right? So Shango explained the story, Agayu recalled, and, their relationship kind of began from there, right? Where they were able to all kind of, accommodate each other as a family, and Shango was able to, basically, fulfill that need from son to father, and at the same time assume his role to be king one day. Because Obadala, even though, Shango wasn't his legitimate son, still recognized him as his heir, which, is a beautiful story in itself, and it really speaks to the relationship that Shango and Obadala always had. Even though Obadala didn't conceive him, Obadala was always there to kind of support him and give him the knowledge and the wisdom to be able to make the right decisions as king moving forward, right, as he moved into adulthood. So that's a beautiful story in that aspect, right? When Shango actually did become king, there were, there's various stories, but he actually didn't take his his kingship as well as most people would have imagined, especially with his pedigree and being raised as a prince and having Obadala as an advisor until that separation occurred. Shango actually went a little bit mad with power. When he actually became king and became Alafing and had his own kingdom and all these different things, he didn't handle it well. He kind of became, like I said, he became very, vicious with his power. And Shango had a real bad habit of creating akoshe, or medicines, or ogu in reality, or witchcraft to be able to destroy his enemies, because he was very warlike in nature, which goes back to his name, right? So before I get into the other part of the story, there's another thing about Shango that most people don't realize is his relationship with medicine, right? When we look at akoshe or ogu or whatever is being prepared, a lot of it has to be burned. And being due to the intense ingredients that are sometimes involved in the traditional medicine, and usually they're burned. Being that Shango is associated with the flame, he's actually associated with medicine. He's actually someone that helps facilitate that. So, I've actually met quite a few children of Shango who are doctors, and they always ask me, what does Shango really have to do with medicine? And that's one really great explanation of that. But going back to the story, Shango had this bad habit of constantly creating witchcraft against his enemies. And, Ifa had advised him to have self-control with this, that he didn't always have to resolve his issues this way, right? And what ended up happening is Shango didn't take heed, and because of it, in an accident, he actually destroyed his whole palace along with killing his family and kind of decimating Oyo. And he survived, fortunately and unfortunately, because he had to deal with, the repercussions of his actions. This pataki kind of translates into another Odu known as Ogundatadura, which is actually, unfortunately, an Odu that speaks of suicide, right? And what ended up happening was Shango, due to the shame and angst that he actually felt after doing this, went into the forest to actually take his own life, right? There's a couple different stories about how this actually transpired as well. There are some versions where he did ultimately kill himself, unfortunately. And there's a version, and this kind of goes back to the Agayu thing, because there's some versions where him and Agayu were brothers, even here, and they were twin brothers. And what ended up happening is after Shango passed away, his enemies rejoiced and basically, shamed him. And then what they did was the people who were able to survive the blast went looking for his brother Agayu, who some people even said lived in the land of Koso, right? Which kind of gets into another thing we're going to talk about. And they went looking for Agayu, and he looked exactly like Shango, and they told basically Agayu, you need to assume the role of the Alafing now that your brother or predecessor, however you want to interpret it, is now gone. So Agayu said, well, I'll do what I must. So when Agayu came riding basically into town with his his army and all these different things, his enemies yelled out Obakoso or Obanikoso. So when we look at Obakoso, the word Obakoso means the king did not hang. And the reason they said that is because they thought Shango was dead, but seeing his twin brother Agayu come in, they kind of doubted that. They're like, oh my God, this guy is alive again, right? So that's where one of those things come from. And apart from that, Agayu, in certain aspects, was seen as the king of Koso. So they recognized him like, oh, the king of Koso has come to claim the throne of Oyo, or the Alafing, right? As was his right, based on the blood right. So there's that aspect of things. And that's why, even till this day, we say this when we hear the name Shango, or we mention him, or we hear a thunderbolt, because it says that when Shango returned, whether it be as Agayu, or even the version I'm going to explain now, when he, basically resurrected, they said lightning and thunder started falling. So they said this in fear, like a way of asking for mercy, because he had come to reclaim his throne, right? So that's that aspect of things, and it kind of explains why even Agayu, in some of the lineages of the Alafing, came right after Shango, because of this story that we're talking about right now. There's other versions where, which is probably more Western influenced, where Shango went to hell, unfortunately, for the suicide, or had to live in the dark realm. And it's said that, Eshu and a bunch of other Orishas went to actually bring him back, which could also explain the story where Shango went back into Oyo to be able to restore his kingdom and overcome his situation, right? Regardless of which, and there's also another version where Shango went into the forest and he was accompanied by his friend Abbo, which is actually the ram, right? Who would be the witness to his unfortunate suicide. And there's some versions where Eshu or Orula came and actually stopped him from hanging himself. Like they caught him before the rope fully extended and would have had that result. And he was able to return and overcome that situation. A lot of different versions, a lot of different stories, a lot of really rich literature when it comes to this story specifically. But the moral of the story is kind of the same, and it kind of translates into the trajectory of the son of Shango as he kind of goes through life. We're talking about all these things. We're talking about the need for self-control, the need for awareness, the need of really thinking things through, because as such, by spiritual birthright, the children of Shango are kings. They are used to being able to have control over things, and even having the world at his fingertips. Unfortunately, Shango made the wrong decision. He was able to overcome it and kind of, redeem himself, right? Based on this, you're going to notice that a lot of the children of Shango are predisposed to becoming babalawos, right? Or just practicing Ifa in general. And it's because Shango is the keeper of the secrets of Ifa, right? Him and Orumila had basically an interaction or basically a treaty that they created within each other, where Shango ultimately gave him the Opong Ifa, or the tablero, or the table of Ifa, and Shango would stay with the dance and the drum. But it never really alleviated Shango of his responsibilities of defending Ifa. So you're always going to recognize that there are a lot of sons of Shango who are babalaos. Now, ironically, Ogunda de Dura, after Shango was aided by Orula in not taking his own life, due to Orumila's wisdom and understanding divine providence and saving basically the king from destroying their whole empire, Shango always thanked his brother, and he said, from this day forward, my children in Ifa will not be allowed to be mediocre. If a child of Shango wants to become a babalawo, he must excel and exceed all expectations. If not, unfortunately, he'll receive my curse or my chepe or my I won't look upon him with good eyes. That's why the children of Shango have to be very careful before they initiate themselves in Ifa, that they're fully aware of and understanding that they need to excel. And the ones that actually do accept that, they're fantastic babalaos. Miguel Febles, who was probably one of the most famous babalaos ever, was a child of Shango. Numerous amounts of my godbrothers are children of Shango and babalaos as well. And they're excellent. They're all obas. They're all directors of this ceremony, as well as the children of Shango who practice Ifa and other aspects as Oriate or Orisha. When they really put themselves and apply themselves to it, they're excellent, right? And that's kind of the thread where the child of Shango is going to do well in whatever he wants to do, right? But Shango in this Odu of Ogunda de Dura recognized that he did not want mediocrity out of his children. So great message for them that Shango is always watching them to make sure they exceed in whichever path they choose to move forward in, right? So it speaks of his selectivity, what he expects from his children. We talked about the version where Agayu was Shango's twin brother. We explained Obakoso and Obanikoso and its various meanings. And we also touched on the role of self-control and its importance in the life of the child of Shango. And another thing that really touches on the Shango and the self-control thing is when we look at the child of Shango, there's a saying within Yoruba culture that the child of Shango carries the oshe of Shango on his head, or the axe, right here in the middle, basically. And what he's always trying to do, the child of Shango, is control it from swaying one way or another, maintaining it erect. Pedro, my friend, thank you for watching. And it really speaks on that self-control, because if an axe sways one way or the other, it can cause a lot of damage. It's about the importance of the child of Shango maintaining his alignment with his Ori, not allowing himself to fall into the vices that, basically their father did. I mean, when you're the king of a whole nation, everything's at your fingertips. And Shango is associated heavily with procreation, women, the dance, the drum, certain vices that are associated with that. And him being able to overcome that. So it's very important that the priests of this Orisha realize this, that self-control is important, and all of us can learn something from this, right? Long life to you as well, my brother. Thank you. I hope you and your family are doing well. Nothing but health. Thank you. and just the self-control. And it's a great lesson all of us can learn from the example that Shango gave. Everything is self-control. Everything has to be in moderation, because in us becoming too vicious with something or overindulging, we could destroy the people that we love, that we have around us, right? Like he did. So it definitely touches on that, right? When we're talking about Shango, another phrase that's really we'll definitely get into Obefun. We'll definitely get into Obefun in a little bit. Wonderful Odu, right? When we're talking about Shango, there's a phrase that is very associated with him, and you're gonna hear it a lot. It's Kabiosile or Kabiosileo, right? Or Kabiesi, or etc. When we look at the word Kabosileo, I remember when I was sitting with one of my Yoruba teachers, and we were talking about this, and when I went into the room, she said Kabosileo, and I was like, I'm not Chango, but we ended up having that conversation, and the word Kabosileo means I receive you in the home, right? So when we're talking about the Alafin, right? And we're talking about the king of the state of Oyo, basically. Whenever people see him, they always want to invite him into the home, right? So when the king's walking around, you'll hear Cabo Sileo, like, please come in, right? Please grace us with your presence. And it's the same thing with Shango. So what happens is when you hear the name Shango, or you hear any of these things, you're always going to hear the word Cabo Sileo as a term used, because we want Shango to come. Even in the bata drummings and things like that, when Shango is on his way, or you can see the Orisha manifesting there, you're going to hear that, and that's actually what motivates Shango to come, because we're asking him to come to the home, right? So that's why you're going to hear Kabiosile and all these different things. It's actually a term of inviting Shango in, right? So, and you're also going to hear Kabiesi or Kabiesileo. It also, the word Kabiesi means your highness, right? So you might hear that variation as well. Kabiesileo, which means his highness has entered the home. So that's why we're going to say that to Shango when he actually, manifests or is around, or when we're asking him for things. We're asking that him and his blessings really arrive in our home. So another nice explanation there from our Yoruba brothers, and them just, helping us clarify things from an idiomatic and, grammar standpoint. So really, really nice stuff. Shango is associated with the color red, pretty evident, right? Due to his association with the flame, all of these different things. Like I said, the Alafing, even to this day, when he has like a public appearance or anything like that, he'll be dressed in like these beautiful red robes, and it represents his virility, his power. If you look at other positions within Yoruba culture, like the Areo no Kankafo, which is actually a position that has heavily to do with Shango, and it's somewhat of a general. He dresses in red quite frequently as well, and it's something that is very, very commonplace, and it's just a representative of that, and constantly remembering Shango and his power, right? So, and you also see it as well in his necklaces. You're gonna see the red and white intertwining. Badala was courteous enough to give the white bead to Shango to help be able to temper his virility. We're talking about fire, and we're talking about all these other things and all this power and potency that he had. Obadala recognized he needed to be able to be helped to be able to kind of keep this under control. Going back to the story where Shango destroyed everything with his fire. So it was just a matter of him, Obadala, helping him control that. And his Ileke represents that. Once again, the thread of the balance, which is going to be a recurring one with this Orisha, right? And we talked about the Alafing's clothing selection. Perfect. So let's get into some adimus, right, or some offerings. So probably the most popular one is probably going to be the banana, right? Even on the Santa Barbara statue that I have. And for those who are kind of wondering why is this here if we're talking about an African deity, Saint Barbara is actually the saint that is syncretized with Shango in the diaspora, right? At least within Cuba. She was recognized as having certain qualities that were similar to Shango. She was a warrior. She basically held a sword. She dressed in red robes. She had to do with a tower, a palace. So they said, even though she's a woman, we'll identify her with Shango, and we'll worship her as if she's Shango to be able to hide our beliefs, which is where Santeria comes from, right? But even at the foot of this, I really love this statue. This is my son's. I borrowed it, actually. He has it next to his Shango. He has crown Shango. And at the bottom, you actually see, this big racimo of plátanos, right? Or the bananas. So really, I've always really liked this image because it kind of meshes both of the belief systems in one image. But you're going to see that the bananas are a really big symbol of Shango, and it's probably one of his preferred foods, if not the preferred, between that and maybe like the the cornmeal and okra that we're going to get into shortly. But the explanation for the banana thing, there's going to be various odus that speak of this, but one pretty important one is going to be one that is found in the Odu of Oshebara, right? And what ended up happening was is that in this Odu, Shango and Oshun were married, right? And they basically had a marriage, and they did all the normal things married people do. And Shango left to war, not realizing that he left Oshun pregnant, right? So what ended up happening is Oshun, by the grace of God, ended up having triplets. So this was the first time that this had happened in history, right? So people were kind of shook. And when Shango came back, he basically cursed Oshun because he thought that she had been unfaithful to him. Because up until that point, the only thing that had existed were Ibeji, right, or twins. So when the trillizos or the triplets came out, Oshun was really under a lot of pressure, right? And she was actually going to go to court because of it, right? So what ended up happening is she actually took her children and went to the river to actually hide them, right, with her sister Oya, right? So Oya, being her sister and trying to protect Oshun, took her children or her nephews and nieces, what have you, and hid them. So when Oshun actually went to court, Olofin basically called both of them in front of him and was like, what's going on? And Shango said, my wife has been unfaithful to me. And because of this, she's given birth to triplets, right? And, Olofin looked at Oshun and said, what do you have to say about this? These are pretty serious claims. And Oshun said, I've never been unfaithful to my husband. This was an act of God or an act of yours. I've had nothing to do with this. I simply gave birth to my children and I've taken care of them. So Olofin looked at her and said, you're being honest because I was the one who sent them to you. And he looked at Shango and he said, from this point forward, you have to really think about things before you start saying things about people, because you might not have all the answers up front, right? So he said, from this day forward, you need to honor your wife and honor your children. And, as a reason of this, that's how things were able to move forward. But the offering that Shango had to provide as tribute, or had to be provided to him as tribute, to be able to recognize that everything was legitimate, was actually the bananas, which ironically is actually an adimu that has to do with the Ibeji as well, and actually is one that is shared between them and their father Shango, right? So it speaks on that, and it touches on the importance of the bananas to him. They represent prosperity, they represent consumption, they represent all of these beautiful things. So if we look at also a suye, or a song that has to do with Shango, that actually touches on the plátano, or the banana, or ogede, as it's known here, right? So the suye goes, Ala bio yo he, ala bio yo he, baba ogede ile kao. So if we kind of look at what that story is saying, or that song is saying, it says, Ala bi oyoe. The ruler is in Oyo, or the king is in Oyo. Baba ogede ile kawo, which means, Father, the bananas are in the house. Please come in. Remember, the word kabo means come in, or you're invited to. So it talks about when Shango would visit the home and be invited into the home, he expected to be fed these things, right? So basically, that just reiterates even more the importance of this offering to Shango, right? So definitely touched on that. When we're talking about more adimus, or offerings to Shango, even though this is more New World and New Age, the apples. And I think it really has to do with the color, because, you would go into houses in Cuba or in Miami when I was a young boy in Hialeah, and you'd see a Santa Barbara statue, or a Shango actually consecrated by an Orisha, and you'd see the apples in front of them. And from what I understand, it's not a common fruit in Africa, but still it was recognized as something that Shango responded to due to the color. So you're going to see those as well being offered. And, another fruit that is going to be very popular and is actually spoken of in various Odu of Ifa is the mamey, right? With its reddish color within it, and various Odu speak of it. And, it's another offering to Shango. There's actually some Odus where it's not the best thing to offer, but that really comes with the study and identifying the pataki and how it responds to that, right? But commonplace, usually Shango accepts mames just fine. Right? Another offering that is really popular within basically the propitiation of Shango as well is going to be dry wine or cooking wine. And within the Lukumi tradition, it's known as otikana, right? And you're also going to see as well red wine that's offered to people, right? Or to Shango specifically, due to the color as well. Very important, and within ceremonial aspect, you always have to have a bottle of dry wine, especially if Shango is involved. Red palm oil, really big staple here, really important. A lot of Orishas like this. Shango is another one who really likes it, right? Probably one of the most popular ones as well is going to be cornmeal and okra, right? Or harina de maíz con quimbombo. It's also known as amala, which is making reference to the cornmeal, and ila, which makes reference to the okra or quimbombo, right? Which is perfectly legitimate, but when we're looking at what amala is within the traditional Yoruba culture, it can be made by various or with various ingredients, right? So from one of them, you actually see amala is made with elubo, which is, yam powder. But there is amala that's also made with cornmeal. So that's where you kind of see the translation into the New World practice, right? And the okra, definitely something that can be incorporated. And, the Yoruba diet is very vegetable based. You're going to hear the word efo spoken of a lot, which actually refers to like salad and, vegetables and various different herbs as well. And when we're talking about, the cornmeal and the okra, and this is why I said that it's comparable even with the bananas as well as far as importance, because there's various iere or songs that speak about, Shango consuming this. And one of them is, Ea, ahe, Shango hamalakoide, Chango hamalakoide, Chango yamalakoide. Well, when we're talking about the term it's a term of respect, right? It's not just a random noise that we put in our songs. So when we're saying we're talking about the respect we have for Shango from a tonal aspect. And Chango amalakoide, you can translate it a couple different ways. Shango and amala is obviously Shango and amala are the cornmeal. Koide could be referring to that if he's not given it, he could stop the blessings from arriving, right? So one possible way of translating that, and there's actually multiple suyres that speak of the propitiation of Shango with this item, right? And just as a reminder, we're going to be getting to, the remainder questions and all these things once we get to the end of the video. So thank you so much for your patience. Another thing is, ideally, when we're talking about the foods to Shango, especially when we're talking about the cornmeal, Shango is a very masculine Orisha. He likes to be surrounded by women, as is his nature, right? So especially with the cornmeal, ideally it should be served by a woman, right? So my mother has crowned Shango, and the times I would offer, this to Shango, my mother would be the one to actually provide that to Shango while I, provided the suyres that accompany that ceremony. So it's always ideal that it's a woman, and if it's a child of Shango, a daughter of Shango, even better, God bless them, right? So apart from the offerings that don't take any blood, we're going to talk about some of the animals that are associated with Shango and are also, sacrificed to Shango. And probably the most identifiable animal with Shango is going to be the ram, also known as abo, right? Which is the Yoruba word for the yam. And there's a pretty significant story that really touches on the relationship between this animal and this deity. And it's going to be found in the Odu Okanamei, right? Which within the diaspora of the Afro-Cuban Ifa is identified as the Odu, where Shango first manifested, right? So the story goes that when Shango first came down from heaven, or his irumole, his energy that was associated with him in heaven was Jakuta, right? Or also known as Ajaka, right? And the word Jakuta means he who throws stones, right? Or rocks. He's known as the stone thrower deity. So in this version of the Pataki, this was Shango's name when he was first born or first manifested, right? And it really resonated with him because, once again, of his character. He was somebody that was very forceful. He was somebody that was a little bit conflictive, right? And Jakuta's friend, or the person he was always with, was the ram, right? So they were kind of people that really were doing anything they could to make a living, right? Unfortunately, they were doing things, whatever they could do to get by. They were kind of just living, on the edge, right? So one day they decided to start a business selling fruit, right? And it was going very, very well. But with time, the ram started noticing we're not making as much money as we should be based on the amount of fruit that we sell. And it also touches on the delight that Shango gets in fruit. He was constantly surrounded by it, whether it be, the bananas, the mamey, any of these fruits. Shango is very fruit-centric, so it's a wonderful adimu to give to him. So the two friends, Jakuta and Abbo, went to visit Orumila, right? And when they did this, they performed divination, and they were told to do ebo, and put it on the four corners, and to hide and watch and see who was stealing from them, right? So they ended up doing the ebo. Ironically, the ebo involved fruits, and they left the ebo on the four corners, and then they went to hide in the bushes. So with time, hours were going by and nobody would show up, and the ram looked at Shango, and Shango looked at the ram, and Shango said to the ram, I'm going to dip out, I'm going to take a break. You just stay here watching, and see what you find out. So the ram told Shango, hey, no worries, go live your life. I'll be here watching. The ram, unfortunately, was very tired, and even some versions of the story, he kind of had like a narcoleptic situation going on where he would just randomly fall asleep, right? And even to this day, you kind of look at the ram, and if you leave it there idle as an animal long enough, it kind of nods off, right? So what happened was the ram ended up falling asleep, and when the ram fell asleep, he out of nowhere woke up, and when he looked up, he saw that somebody dressed in all red was running away with the sack of fruits. And he looked and he said, oh my God, those are the same clothes my friend Jakuta was wearing. And then it kind of clicked like, oh my God, my friend is the one who's been stealing from me, right? And the reason Shango left, or Jakuta left the ram watching the fruits, was because he knew that his friend had this weakness of where he would fall asleep, right? He had like this condition where he would fall unconscious especially when he was tired or hadn't eaten. So, Abbo realized that his friend was the one who had betrayed him this whole time, and he was greatly hurt by it. But there's another angle to this story. And the angle to this story is that Jakuta was actually the person who was next in line to become the king of Oyo, right? This guy who was kind of living doing odds and ends was actually a prince with an heir to a kingdom, right? So with time, Jakuta became king, and when he became king, he received the king name of Shango, which means he who basically hits with permission, right? Because he had a very character that was very difficult to deal with. He was constantly punishing people because he was frustrated. But one of the things that was frustrating him the most was that in the world, someone knew that he was a thief, or they knew about his previous life. And the ram started going around telling everybody once Shango became king that, hey, that guy in the past was a thief and he stole from me. Obviously somebody in that position doesn't want to be in, or doesn't want being said about them. So when Shango started hearing these rumors, he started basically becoming unruly, right? He was starting to throw thunder and lightning and thrones and punishing people, like stones and punishing people. And, the Babalaos did divination, and they were like, what do we have to do to like calm you down? Because you're going to kill us. And Shango said, the only way I'm going to calm down, or I'm going to be happy or relaxed, is if you sacrifice me a ram. So ironically, the only ram in the world at that time was his friend Abbo. And they searched far and wide, and they found him. So what ended up happening is they brought him into the palace, right? And there's certain suyeres that I could sing right now, but I'm not gonna sing them because they're very based on the room, and I'm very respectful of our traditions. But basically, Shango started singing and telling them, drop him to the floor and subdue him, right? Which they did. And then the next song he came out with was tie his mouth closed and don't let him speak. And the reason Shango didn't want the ram to speak is because the ram was going to basically tell everybody that their king was a thief, and it would have been a huge revolt. So unfortunately, at that moment, they struck the ram, and the ram unfortunately was bleeding, and he was being sacrificed to Shango, and Shango was consuming him, a little bit grotesque. And ultimately, what was on his mouth loosened a little bit, and he looked at Shango, and a tear came down his eye. And he said, "You know what? I can't believe you betrayed me, but just know that whether it be in here or in heaven, I'll always tell everybody how much of a thief you are." Until this day, the ram did not scream. He simply shed a tear. And unfortunately, when this animal is processed the way we do it, the ram does not scream, he does not yell. He simply gets watery eyed because it was unjust the way he was ultimately sacrificed. And he was able to get out his last words, and the last words he was able to get out was actually a song that's sung to Shango even till this day in the Bata drummings. And the song is Emi ole, ara ole, emi ole. And what it says is Emi ole, I'm a thief, ara ole, I stole from the town, I'm a thief. And it's really ironic because when you go to the drummings and this song, at least the way I've seen it in Cuba, and this song is sung in the Añá ceremonies, you actually see Shango taking money from people or asking them for offerings to give it to the apong, or the person singing, right? So really glorious Pataki, really glorious explanation of things, and once again speaks of the transitions of Shango, the son of Shango, and his inseparable relationship with Abbo, right? So this is probably the animal you're going to see the most associated with this Orisha, and probably one of my favorite Patakis. And up until this point, I haven't seen it in English, so definitely something I wanted to share with everybody, right? But really rich literature here, right? With a lot of explanations as far as the Afro-Cuban tradition and how we do things. There is a basis for everything, right? Another animal that you're going to see associated with Shango heavily is the turtle, right? And there's various pataki about the turtle. Forgive me. And for everybody just joining us, thank you first and foremost for watching in these trying times. We're doing a video on Shango, and we're about to start on the turtle, right? And his link with Shango. So when we're talking about the turtle, various pataki that speak about this animal, very important animal in the mythology of Ifa. And there's a bunch of different patakis that speak of this. But one that I like to touch on that I saw really associated it with Shango and his consumption of it, and his preference of it. It's actually a pataki from the Odu Ochesa, right? And in Ochesa was it speaks of a gentleman named Ochesa, right? And Ochesa, I won't speak about the destination of where he was going, but in Ochesa was where he was trying to arrive somewhere, right? And what ended up happening is he went for divination with Ifa, and Orumila told him to stay on course, follow the path, as the Ebo had instructed. And what ended up occurring was Ochesa set out, he performed sacrifice, he did everything. But when he was going through the forest to get to where he was going, he actually ran into a woman, right? A woman of shorter stature, right? And what ended up happening was the woman asked him, "Hey, where are you going?" And Ochesa told her, he said, "Well, I'm trying to get to said place," right? And the turtle said, "Well, don't go this way, go that way." And Ochesa responded, "Well, Rumila told me to go this way." And, the woman basically said, "Hey, don't listen to him, listen to me. I live here." And Ochesa was like, "Well, that makes sense." And he went the other way. Ironically, when he went the other way, he noticed he wasn't arriving where he was meant to arrive. And based on the time he had been walking, he should have been there by now. So what ended up happening was he ended up running into Shango in the forest, who ironically was his father. And Shango looked at him and said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "No, I'm trying to get to where I'm trying to get to. I was trying to find you." And he was like, "But if you wanted to find me, I was that way. I came looking for you because I didn't know where you had went. I got nervous. I got worried. What happened to you?" And Ochesa said, "Well, I met this woman in the forest and she told me there was a quicker way." Where, Ochesa says, be patient and follow the selected paths to get to where you get to where you're trying to get to. Avoid shortcuts. And Shango said, No. You were supposed to be there a while ago. Show me who told you this. And when he got there and he showed Shango the woman was the turtle, right? And Shango said, what you've done here is inexcusable because you know what path, my son was meant to take. So he looked at his son, he said, sacrifice me the turtle and I'll take you where you have to go. And unfortunately, the turtle got sacrificed, right? And it speaks one of the various Odu that speaks of where Shango consumed turtle. And there's songs that go with it that are very liturgical as well. I'm not going to share them here, but definitely when we're talking about the turtle, the sacrifice of it, any of the interactions with it, when you're going through this process, you're realizing how closely linked it is to Shango, right? So definitely an animal that goes with that, right? Another animal you're going to see that's really associated with Shango is going to be the lizard, right? In some versions, you're going to hear the word agemo. In some, dialects, you're going to hear the word agema, especially in the Lukumi. But definitely an animal that's associated with Shango, and at one point was actually Shango's personal servant, right? And what happened, and this is also in an Odu of Ifa, Shango had fallen madly in love with Oya, right? He wanted to marry her. He wanted her to be his concubine, etc. And he wasn't taking no for an answer, and he was not sparing any cost or expense to be able to get Oya's attention. So what ended up happening was he told the lizard, take this gift to Oya. In the Western world, when we're talking about the badagi, some people say it was a ring with a nice big red gemstone on it. Other people say it was just a gemstone. It was something very vibrantly red in color, right? So what ended up happening is Shango told the agemo, he said, get there as quickly as you can, right? Agemo can be one of many different lizards. Some people are going to say it's a chameleon. Some people it's going to say the green anole, which is a Cuban to a certain degree, but it's a lizard, right? So what ended up happening and for sake of the story, we're going to say it's the anole, or the slender green lizard that you see everywhere in Miami, in most of Florida. He told the lizard, get there as quickly as you can. So what the lizard did is, being that he really couldn't carry anything anywhere else if it was trying to run or scurry over there, he put the diamond, the diamond, in his mouth. So what ended up happening was the lizard was going so quickly, he tripped up and accidentally swallowed the diamond. So, unfortunately, he had no way of getting it out. His extremities wouldn't allow him to do that. So he was so afraid of the repercussions, he hid in the palm tree, and was trying to wait and let things kind of, blow over. And what ended up happening is one day Shango went up to Oya, seeing her randomly, and he said, you didn't like the gift I gave you? And Oya was like, what gift? You haven't given me anything. And Shango said, you didn't receive the gift with the lizard? She said, I've neither seen the gift nor the lizard, and you're a liar. Shango was so embarrassed, he went looking for the lizard. And what happened was he saw the lizard from heaven. He saw the lizard in the palm tree, and he started screaming at the lizard, why'd you make me look bad? Why didn't you provide this to Oya? You're a thief, you're this, you're that. And the problem was the lizard's throat was so full from the diamond, he couldn't respond. So Shango took this as an insult and started throwing lightning bolts at him. That's why till this day, the palm tree is one of, those trees that really gets a lot of attention from the lightning bolt. It's also a tree that has a lot to do with Shango. And it's also the reason from this badaki why you see certain lizards, when they extend their throat, it's very red in color. So the Yoruba said, that's a reminder that the lizard stole the diamond from, Shango, which wasn't true at all. The poor thing tripped, But it speaks of that relationship as well, right? So a couple of the animals, a couple of the offerings that have to do with this, amazing Orisha. A little bit of numerology that we're going to go into to kind of understand those vibrations. He's heavily associated with the number 6. And because of this, he's heavily associated with the Odu Obara, which is, the 6th letter in the Egungun oracle, at least within the Afro-Cuban tradition. And ironically, another explanation of the number 6 is the number 6 is the amount of personal bodyguard that Shango would always transport himself with. So whenever Shango would ever go from one place to another, or the Alafing at this point would go from one place to another, he always had 6 soldiers with him to defend him. So it speaks of that. And one Odu that actually speaks of this is Ireteanza, and which speaks heavily of Shango as well. And Ireteanza also speaks of his relationship with the palm tree, right? Because in this sign, Shango, for some reason or another, he was a king and he was a good king, but he didn't want to focus on kingly duties. So he was constantly in the drummings, he was constantly enjoying life, doing other things. So you're going to see the Shango, whether he was selling fruit with the ram or just, doing whatever hobby he wanted, you'd see him doing some pretty random things for a king to be doing. And one of the things he would do is he would climb palm trees for fun, right? for whatever reason, when he was bored. So one of these Odus, which is Idete Ansa as well, or Idete Temusa, or Idete Osa, speaks of where Shango would climb the trees. It would make him the center of attention. He would be on the tree, sitting on the tree, jumping around on the tree. And one of those Odus is Idete Ansa. So definitely an Odu that speaks heavily about him, right? Next thing we're going to get into is the various relationships that Shango had with other Orishas, right? He basically interacted with everybody. Definitely a deity who interacted with everybody at one point or another. Some of the interactions were good. Some of them may have been better, right? But one deity that Shango is heavily associated with is Eshu, or Elegua, right? Some would even go as far to say that they're Abure Okanani, which within the Afro-Cuban Lukumi tradition means brothers of the same heart, right? Various interactions with them. You're even going to hear some people say that, they compose two halves of the same body, where, Eshu's face is over here and Shango's face is over here, or they're constantly back to back or supporting each other. So a very heavy relationship there. If we're talking about another relationship that wasn't always that positive, was actually Chango and Ogun, right? Unfortunately, there's various stories, and not to get into too much depth on this, but when unfortunately Ogun insulted his mother through the pataki that most people would know, Shango took this very personally as a disrespect to his father, Osagdinyang, and because of it, he took every opportunity to disrespect and humiliate Ogun, to the point where Shango took Ogun's wife, who at the moment was Oya, because they were legitimately married, right? And there's Odus that speak of the great war that started between Shango and Ogun over Oya. And this is only one version of the many conflicts that they had, right? But the war got so bad at one point that they almost destroyed the earth. And because of this, Olodumare called both of them to basically his presence and was like, you guys can't continue like this. This has to come to an end because you're going to destroy everybody. Shango presented his case. Ogun presented his case. And Olodumare told Shango, your brother has auto-punished himself to not have to go through this anymore. You have to kind of let it go. Your father's letting it go. Everybody's letting it go except you. And, you've disrespected him by taking his wife, to whom he's legitimately married, right? And Envy, happy belated birthday. Talking about your dad, right? Shango came to the conclusion, all right, I won't take his wife, but that's his wife's decision whether she wants to stay with me or not. And ultimately, Oya, in some versions, she went back with Ogun. In other versions, she ended up still, dealing with Shango that way. But it speaks of the huge war. Boruboya Mihala, blessings. It speaks of that war between the brothers. And then there's other Odu where they actually work together towards a common goal. So it's really a back and forth, but definitely not anything to think of now, because these were conflicts that happened thousands, eons, millions of years ago, whatever you want to call it. And there's no reason there needs to be any conflict between these two deities or their children, right? So it talks about that. We talked about Chango and Obadala, the in-depth relationship they have, the respect, love, and admiration that Shango had for Obadala, and the role Obadala played in him becoming, the infamous king that Shango ended up becoming, right? We talked about Shango and Ochun. It speaks heavily of their relationship within the story that I spoke about with the Ibeji in Oshebara, where they were the Ibeji's parents, right? And we're actually going to touch on another aspect of their relationship when we start talking about Chango and Oya shortly. Chango and Yemaya are heavily linked together as well. In my video of Yemaya, we talk about how Chango and Yemaya became inseparable, and they helped each other eat and progress, and their relationship. So definitely, and you're going to hear, whenever you hear somebody crown with Shango and their mother's Yemaya, or crown with Yemaya and their mother's Shango, you're going to hear the term Oni Oni, spoken of heavily, which refers to that situation where you have that mother or that father, etc., or crowning, right? Shango and Oya. We just talked about the situation and the war that happened between Shango and Ogun over Oya, but there's actually another story, also from the Odu Oshesa, that speaks of the relationship between Shango, Oya, and ultimately Oshun. So it's really interesting because whenever you hear about Shango, you're gonna hear like various thoughts about certain themes, but one of the heavily debated themes with Shango is Egun, right? Oh, Shango is either completely afraid of Egun or the spirits, or he is Oba Egun, or the king of the spirits. And ironically, Shango is Egun's father. And there's even versions that say that Shango is the ninth son that Oya had with them together, right? And he's known as Oba Egun, or Egun's father, or the one who has complete control over that cult. And you're going to notice with Shango, Shango is literally threaded into and involved in every aspect of our ceremonial practice. Regardless of whatever area of Ifa you're talking about, Shango is there, right? And what ended up happening is a lot of people, even to this day, feel like Shango is afraid of Egun. And the Pataki I'm about to speak of is kind of indicative as to why. But I think we need to reevaluate that because, if Shango is the king of the Egun cult, we really have to look at that. So we're going to get into this pataki right now. And in this story, Shango and Oya were together, right? Or married or whatever situation they had. But Shango was always doing his own thing. He had other, situations, other friends. He was always visiting other people, trying to just do his own thing. And Oya was really tired of it. She's like, I'm not going to have you, being unfaithful to me. I'm not going to have you doing your own thing. You're not going to go out when you want. I'm going to make you stay home. And what she ended up doing is she filled their house around it with spirits, right? To scare Shango. So, the story says that Shango was terrified because every time he'd walk outside, he'd see like a dead guy walking around or a skeleton floating. And he was just looking for any way to get out of this situation, So Ochung, who was in love with Shango as well, would walk around their house and was noticing like Shango wouldn't come outside. But she would see like Egun and stuff outside, and she really didn't understand what was going on. So she snuck up to his window and she said, "What's going on with you guys?" And he was like, my wife has me like locked into this house. There's dead people walking around all the time. I'm freaked out. I'll do anything to get out of here. And Shango and Ochung said, "Well, if you marry me, I'll get you out of here." And Shango was like, "I'll do whatever you want me to." So Ochung distracted the muertos. Hello, Mayra. Ochung distracted the muertos so that Shango could escape. And they escaped and they had a nice honeymoon and all these beautiful things. But Ochung noticed that Shango became depressed. And she said, "Why are you depressed if, I freed you and we're having a great time?" And Shango looked at her in the eyes and he said, "I love you. But regardless of what she's done to me, I can never stop loving Oya." And, Ochung was heartbroken. Shango ended up going back home. And, it's a real novela, as we like to say. But I think it talks heavily of the relationship between Shango and Oya as well. Unfortunately, Shango was always breaking Ochung's heart. It's unfortunate, But a lot of people say, no, Ochung was the woman that Shango always pined for, always would think about. Well, mythology says that his favorite wife, his favorite situation was Oya. And it was to the point where even Oya would mistreat him or scare him or any of these things. It was something about Oya that Shango always went back to Oya. It was a real infatuation. He loved all his wives, but Oya was one that, she was right there with him. And I think it was because she had the same characteristics that he had. She was a warrior, all of these different things. So, it speaks of that. But going back to the Egun thing, if you notice, Shango was afraid of Egun here. Everything's a manifestation. And it's interesting because if Shango is Egun's father, or Oba Egun as he's known, there's no real fear there. I think if anything, it was just a Pataki trying to explain, why his actions were the way they were, right? But he is heavily involved in that cult. Ironically, when the Egun masquerade comes out in Nigeria, they're usually dressed in red. And it's ironic because there's articles that I've read and people I've spoken to that say when you're attending to Egun or feeding Egun or any of these things, you want to avoid wearing red. So I've heard various things. Everybody has to come to their own interpretations. I try to avoid it. And ironically, apparently the red color is what attracts Shango's attention to Egun to keep him under control. ironically, and this is more even from a spiritist standpoint, I would recall in the misas in Cuba or in Miami, you know, the espirititas would tell the negative spirits that would come through sometimes, unfortunately, like the muerto juro, you know, I'm going to have my muerto burn you. And it was really ironic when you'd see these spirits get freaked out by fire. But, you know, getting involved in spiritism at a young age and kind of understanding it, being around some really great mediums, and then kind of understanding now as a babalao and the formal Egungun cult, it became very clear to me that it was all speaking about the same thing, because the actual spirits would be afraid of fire. Egungun is afraid of Shango, and Shango controls fire. So it's the one element that could still attack you even in the spirit world. So Shango has complete control over that. You know what I mean? So it's something to think of there. And with Ifa, because I saw somebody had put a comment previously about syncretism and all these different things, Ifa has all the knowledge. This is true. Everything can be found in Ifa. But some of our explanations, we need to pair them up with real world experiences to find our confirmations. Ifa has all the knowledge, but sometimes we have to delve out to be able to understand ourselves better. Because Ifa at one point was one, and through people separating in the world and all these different, you know, cultures that came up, Ifa's secrets are spread out throughout all of these beautiful cultures in the world. Orumila walked all of the lands, or the 16 tierras, right? He went to China, he went to, you know, Arabia, he went to everywhere. So it would be a real, how do I put this? It would be unfortunate for someone to not recognize that we can confirm ourselves through other methods and thus further our faith within Ifa, whether it be through a Santa Barbara statue, whether it be through, you know, anything. We cannot be closed-minded with Ifa. The Babalawo, the Orisha, the practitioner of Ifa cannot be closed-minded. We have to be open, and we need to accept, and we need to be humble and have humility, and you know, also do what works. Because Orumila said, wherever wisdom is, wherever results are, that's where I am. So if you want to be next to Orumila and get closer to him, go with what works and what's right, right? So it speaks of that. Chango and Orula. Oh man, what a relationship, right? We've touched on the story of where, you know, they interchanged implements, where they helped each other fulfill each other's destinies. Believe it or not, one last note I kind of left back here, right? There's even stories of where, you know, we were talking about how the children of Shango are predisposed to Ifa and becoming Babalawo and Orisha. There's even Odu that speak of where, you know, Osha became inconvenient for Shango. I'm not saying this is an overall thing, but this is an Odu-centric thing. And if we look at the Odu Obetwa, it speaks of this as well, where Shango, within the realm of Orisha, wasn't fulfilling himself, or didn't feel like he was interacting well with the Orisha priest. And because of it, he ended up becoming a Babalawo. So it spoke of Shango being the personification of Ifa at that moment, within Earth, you know, between him and his brother Orumila. So it just speaks of how important that relationship is, because you look at these brothers, Shango was unhappy necessarily dedicating himself to Ifa, and Orumila was unhappy just dancing and playing bata all the time. They were able to compromise and help each other get there and still be able to involve themselves to a certain degree with each other's cults, because like I said, a lot of Babalaos are children of Shango, a lot of Omoanya or Onilu or Alanya are Babalawo. So you're going to see that interchange, right? And speaking of Anya, let's go ahead and get into that. And a really beautiful thing here is the relationship between Shango and the drum. It was the thing that probably gave him the most pleasure while on earth, and he's so associated with it. You know, the various iere that go with the bata mention Shango, right? Ironically, in my Odu of Irete Otura or Irete Suka was where Shango and Bata got married. And what ended up happening is because I've spoken to various tamborero friends of mine, associates, and they'll be like, Joseph, where is that pataki? Because the first one that everybody talks about is Edibere, because it speaks heavily of the consecration of Anya, the communication of sound, the drum, the war chants, all of these things, beautiful Odu. But as far as the pataki, where Shango and Bata became inseparable, it's my Odu of Irete Suka. And what ended up happening is when Shango made the change from the tablero or the oponfa to the bata, people became very jealous of him because of the love that they had. And Anyan, this Badaki, is viewed of even as like a person. So they saw the love that they have and the interaction and all these things, and they said, yo, we have to separate these people because he's taking over the world. And what ended up happening is they did everything to separate them. Every obstacle, everything to kind of shield Shango from becoming known musically, all of these different things. And Shango went for divination with his wife, Bada, or Anya, and they performed their bow, and they were able to overcome the Ayewo, or the Ogu, or the negativity and witchcraft that people were putting on them to keep them from fulfilling their destiny. So this is where Shango and Bada became inseparable, because the world wanted to separate them. That's in my Odu of Ilete Suga, the beautiful Badagi, and I'm just humbled that it's in my Odu, because it's a really beautiful one, because it's one of the bases of our religion. I've also spoken to some pretty old Baalaos as well that said, also in Ilete Suga was where the Orisha first started dancing in front of Bada and coming into trance. So it's definitely an Odu that is going to be heavily linked to music, to Shango, Bada, all of these things, all of those processes. Beautiful story, beautiful literature. And kind of my own experiences with Shango, with my Odu. In my Odu as well, it speaks heavily of Shango, and I'll be frank with you guys. I mean, the children of Shango hold a very sacred part or place in my life. I mean, I have a son who has crowned Shango. My mother has crowned Shango. My grandmother was a child of Shango. Some of my very good friends and elders are children of Shango. And just wanted to touch on that as far as my Odu, because it's a pretty intense pataki in my sign. And what happened was Irete Suga speaks of El Hijo del Sacrificial, or the son of sacrifice, right? Because unfortunately, in this point in history, the Yoruba people would perform human sacrifice, right? Luckily, something that we've moved on from and don't really pay much mind to anymore, or at all. And what happened was Oduduwa would basically consume virgins, right? And what ended up happening was a woman was brought forth to be sacrificed to him. He was known as Oduduwa Labuweye. And he saw that she was pregnant. And he said, no, I don't do that. So what ended up happening was she ended up becoming basically a servant in Oduduwa's home. And Oduduwa raised her son. And when Oduduwa began raising the son, Oduduwa already had a son, and his name was Oramiyan, or Shango, right? And they raised the boy. Shango raised him as his adopted younger brother. Oduduwa raised him. They respected his mom. And it came the time when they initiated, I believe the gentleman's name, or his name was Adamu, or Adimu, right? Which means he who is needy, right? And it's also the term that's used for offerings, right? So when they went ahead and ultimately initiated him as a Babalao, he came with Ilete Suga, and Shango began teaching him Ifa, as well as Oduduwa, right? So Adimu ended up growing and learning, and to the point where he started directing the ceremonies of Ifa and Ife, right? He was Oduduwa's, he was his right hand. He was Shango's best pupil. It was just speaking of the role of Shango in my Odu. But what ended up happening one day is Shango went to his brother and said, I'm really done with Ifa. Like, it's not that I don't believe, it's not any of these things, but, I want to move on to other things. I'm a warrior. I want to, conquer other lands. I want to do other things. And the brother said, well, what do you want to do? Ilete Suga said, well, what do you want to do? He said, I want to leave you in charge of our father, of the old man, because he's getting elderly and he needs assistance. And, you and him are like this, religiously. And I'll know he'll be in good hands. And I'm going to go look for other lands, right? So what ended up happening was this happened, and Shango, or Oramiyan, ended up founding Oyo. Kind of bring this whole video back to the beginning. Why Shango is the epitome, or the founder of Oyo. And Adamu, or Adimu, ended up receiving the title of Oni, right? Which, obviously is the term used for the king of Ife, right? And unfortunately, Oduduwa ended up passing away. And, he became the king of Ife, and they were the two brothers who ended up continuing their father's legacy. So, it's just, as an Orisha, if we kind of analyze what Ifa says here, it's Shango taught Ilete Suga Ifa. It's a beautiful story, and because of it, it's really an Orisha that I hold in dear regard. And I think about the roles of the children of Shango in my life. I think about my mother. who has crowned Shango, and I think about my grandmother who passed away, and her role in not necessarily teaching me Ifa, but teaching me manhood and how to progress through life. And it's just incredible how Ifa brings things full circle, right? And, you look at that Odu, and I've analyzed it in my own life, and you see how the parallels of, just interactions between me, my mom, my grandmother, my godkids, all of these things. And it's just beautiful. And this is why I highly recommend everybody study their Odu. Everybody get these real world confirmations to know that we're not here for no reason. We're here to fulfill things. We're here to relive the positive aspects of our destiny and elevate spiritually. So something there. And touching on my grandmother, ironically, she was a twin. You're going to hear some houses of Ifa that say the twins are automatically children of Shango and Yemaya. And also the Ibeji are the children of Shango, right? So you're going to see that as well. My grandmother was a daughter of Shango. And in her hand of Ifa, she was an Odu known as Obeka, right? And, I want to mention her because, she was that first influence. And unfortunately, she's left recently. And her Odu actually speaks of a Bataki where Shango protected his daughter against people that were trying to harm her. So, when you look at things like that, and it really falls into the way Shango protects his children. I will say that all the Orishas protect their children, but if there's one Orisha who really does not like their children to be mistreated, it's Shango. And it's definitely something where, Shango is willing to do whatever it takes to protect his children. So it's a great blessing that the children and priests of Shango have, right? And it's really ironic because actually, I ended up crowning Orisha with my mom, and my mom has crowned Shango, I have crowned Oshun. And it was ironic because when I went to do Santo, everybody thought I was going to be the one crowning Shango. And even when I received the hand of Ifa, I thought I was going to be a child of Shango because we're very Shango-centric people, right? Everybody wants to be a child of Shango, at least the Cuban men, right? So it's one of those things that's very in our culture. It's in our household, and he's a deity that really looks over all of us, right? Couple other things, just one more thing I wanted to touch on before we go ahead and wrap up on some things, and maybe open the floor up for questioning. His association with thunder. When we look at the name Jakuda, right, or Ajaka, it means stone thrower. So the reason it's called stone thrower is because if you notice, when thunder and lightning hits, it almost sounds as if you're throwing a rock against something. So that's where the thunder association comes. And there's various verses of Ifa where Shango used stones to defeat his enemies, right? It speaks about all these things in this heavily diverse Orisha. Just wanted to go back into some of the comments, right? Mayra, blessings to you. May Shango always protect you. To my goddaughter Envy, love you. Happy belated, right? So we have a comment from Carlos Odeniwe, right? So we're going to go ahead and translate that. ¿Por qué yo tendría que adorar a Santa Bárbara si yo creo en Shango? ¿Por qué el falso sincretismo? So basically, Mr. Carlos is saying that why do I have to adore Santa Bárbara if I believe in Shango? And why do we have to practice this false syncretism even till today? Great question, Carlos. I will say that, some people such as yourself may view this as unnecessary, may view this as false. At the end of the day, when we're talking about religion, we're talking about archetypes, right? No one is foreign to the concept that there are similar, characteristics between Shango and this archetype of Saint Barbara, right? Do you have to do it? No. Maybe it's not your culture to. But for me as myself, being a Cuban American man, being somebody that has been around this culture for a long time, I don't see myself ever being able to part ways with my Santa Bárbara or any of my saint images, right? You can call it fake syncretism, but at the same time, this was the same syncretism that allowed our ancestors to basically overcome oppression and slaughter. So these are things that I choose to incorporate to a certain degree in my religious home because it's a way of me commemorating my ancestors and the sacrifices they made to be able to allow this beautiful tradition to make it till today. We sincerely appreciate your comment though, right? Thank you. Blessings. Right? Going on to a couple other ones. Pedro, thank you once again. Definitely my friend. And to Miss Ratisha as well. Thank you for commenting and tagging Miss Tiffany. Guys, we're going to be using this time productively. We're coming out with a bunch of videos. And I want to say thank you so much. If you haven't done it already, like Botanica Candles and more. Follow us. Subscribe to Joseph Babaifa YouTube channel. We're coming out with so much stuff this week. And thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for watching us. I wish nothing but health and to everybody, and safety to everybody as they're going through this. People are really going through some real situations, scary things. If you want some pointers spiritually on how to deal with this, please watch my video on the interpretation of my letra del año. So you can kind of see how Gundavede, or the Odu that was presented this year, really interacts with what's going on in nature right now. Please do. And thank you so much for watching. I wish you guys nothing but health and safety from me and my family to yours. The Botanica, we came out with some videos about it. Please contact me directly so we can go ahead and facilitate whatever we can for you, or be organized with any of your needs. And from Joseph Babaifa, Botanica Candles and more, and from Shango, right? From Shango, from all the Orisha. May Olodumare bless all of us and help us as we work through this hard time. And may we practice unity to be able to, as well as good habits, to be able to get through this trying time and have the time and the opportunity to continue practicing this beautiful faith. And may the tradition of the Orisha and Ifa live on, right? With humility, with ethics, and with honor. Love you guys. Thank you so much, right? From Joseph Baba Ifa, Borui Boy Bochiche. Take care, guys. Cabiesio.